Today's podcast is brought to you by our friends over at Smart Deploy, IT tools to manage Windows computers easier, faster. Head on over to smartdeploy.com/FRD. Bum, bum, bum. He's back. Or something. How was
I'm
it?
going to spend most of today in a coma. How does that sound?
Well, better than a comma.
I do like commas.
I do. Only when used appropriately. So how was it? Did you?
Yeah, the trip was great. Yesterday was a long day, but everything went fine.
Mm-hmm.
Gotta say, excuse me. You gotta appreciate a city the size of Mexico City that is, bigger than any city in the Western Hemisphere. Well, that's not actually true. Bigger than any city in North America, anyway. And you can get from the historic center of the downtown to the airport in 17 minutes in a car. I mean, it's, that's good. But it was, Newark is a disaster. We're in long-term parking, which I think is in Delaware somewhere. And then, it's like it ended up being about an hour and 25 minutes drive. And then, the restaurant we love here that during the pandemic, this is because I was outside helping Mark with his car, is been closed all summer because like a lot of restaurants are having trouble finding help. So they've been doing like one night things lately. And they did one while we were in Mexico, and then they did one last night. And I kind of told them like, we're flying that day. There's no way we can come. And then I was looking at the time and I was like, if we just go home and go right there, we could do it. And so we did do that. And my kids were falling asleep in the chairs. So yet another form of Thurrott family child abuse. You got how long is it going to last, Brad? Soon they're going to be gone. I got to get it in.
Yeah, you got to keep poking while they're, I don't know.
Anyway, here we are. So
yeah, well, I'm happy you made it back.
Yeah, me too, I guess.
Took a little dark turn.
Is, this, right? You're back and everything's the same. And there's some of that's good. And some of it's like, it's a little weird,
Yeah. Well, things that aren't the same from when you left for Mexico and from when you came back is that Microsoft is, they realize, Paul, that revenues are not going to increase themselves. So they're going to the next best thing of raising the prices so that they can continue to keep their record revenues through the next fiscal year.
I had gotten a tip off a couple of days ago that Microsoft was going to be changing the price of Microsoft 365. And I didn't know at the time if it was commercial or everything, or it was just commercial. And I wrote back and I said, are they lowering prices?
Yeah.
Which seems naive in retrospect. By the way, Teams, we're back. Just so people know, I just got a little pop-up in the middle of the Teams window here as we were talking. That was Brad asking me if I was ready to start recording the podcast, which he sent me, 5 minutes ago.
Well, see, it took a long time because I had to go to Mexico looking for you, and then it came back.
Well, this is why they're raising the price. It's the quality of service. It's they can point to all this great stuff they've done. It was over 300 features to have been added to Teams since its initial release. 300. I thought it was more. Anyhow, please continue. I'm sorry.
I don't know. Like, I have mixed feelings on this. First off, Microsoft says that they have not raised the price of the service in a decade, which isn't. It's technically true, but it's not really true because first off, E5 didn't exist when it launched. That's a price raising, and we all know that they've been reducing discounts given to enterprises. So they used to cut quite a bit off the list price, and then they've been slowly reducing that every year when they come up for renewal. And so that's another form of price increasing that has been happening.
Maybe I'm missing the point, but it seems like one of the top 3 rationales for moving to Microsoft 365 is that Microsoft is handling everything on the back end, and they can do this more efficiently and less expensively than a third party. And I honestly, when you scale it, look, there's a cost to the infrastructure. We certainly overburdened the system this past year with COVID. They have added tons of new features, but of course they have. I mean, the thing is, there are alternatives, and I think when you look, we joke about it, but there's a very real effect that is today we'll call it the teamification of applications, or in the day we used to call it the Outlookification, where Microsoft overburdens things with more stuff all the time. I mean, they overburden UIs, and they can point to all of these new services and features they've added to Microsoft 365 over the years. And yeah, that's true. But it's also true that for a lot of people, that's clutter and confusion and complexity.
Right.
And I think for a lot of people, a lot of small businesses in particular, but increasingly too, and businesses of any sizes, they may look at this and say, well, Google has this thing over here and it costs whatever it costs. And they don't have 30 different SKUs. They have 2 maybe. This will always be the battle, between, and this is the Windows versus Mac thing, Android versus iOS is like this. It's complexity and power versus simplicity.
Yep.
And, people will choose depending on their needs. But I just sort of keep going on and on because I can't stop myself this morning. I always talk about Microsoft Word as a perfect example. As a professional writer, I might use 3% of Word's features. It might be less, There's a version of Word out there for me that only has the 8 features I need, maybe. But Microsoft doesn't provide that. And no one does really, I guess. But I mean, that's why I look at things like Markdown editors or more modern writing tools for that simplicity. Simplicity of UI, simplicity of use, simplicity of, everything, and there's a workflow. It has to work for the things, we post articles to the web and it has to work for that and blah, 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 whatever. But, some days I open Word and I'm like, man, it's like, I just want to go through the drive-through window and get a quarter pounder. I don't need a battleship here. It's like, I don't know. Anyway.
Somebody tweeted a response to my post and they said, if I don't use one of the 7 list apps, can I get my price reduced?
That's right. I used to do that when I played basketball. I used to play in men's leagues until I moved to Pennsylvania. And I used to always say, we'd pay at the end of the night. And I said, I'd give the guy, half the amount. And he's like, what's this? And I said, I didn't play really well tonight. Nobody gets me. It's
the other aspect to this, which I think it shines a negative light. I mean, people aren't happy about a price raise anyways. Microsoft just came off its most profitable year ever. And we're 6 weeks after that, 8 weeks after that, or not even, well, I guess.
So by the way, do you think it's not, I'm sorry to interrupt, but this timing is not coincidental, right?
Right.
The pandemic, look, I know we're still we're in it, right? I get it. I mean, it's not over, but we see the future. We understand that it's not going to be like last year again, probably, at least certainly for not the same amount of time. And all those bonus revenues they made, that's going to dry up. And we saw this earlier. There were Teams features they started adding, remember, recently, where they're going to charge for them, right? This used to be stuff they would add for free. And this is what happens. This is, where the bill's coming due, I think is what we're seeing, The
revenue won't generate itself. So you can either add more customers.
That's all we needed. Yeah.
I think that Microsoft looks at the horizon because, again, this isn't taking place until the spring of next year. And I guarantee they have somewhere internally like, okay, what's the amount of growth that we can expect in the seat licenses versus revenue income? And they look at that and say, well, if we just increase things a little bit, then we'll hit all of our targets.
Yeah, we talked about this with regards to security on Windows Weekly this week with the printer stuff. And Google has this history of calling it. They just did it again, by the way. They did it since we recorded the show. They call it Microsoft on some kind of a 0 day or whatever that they had warned Microsoft about 3 months ago. Microsoft never fixed the bug. This printing stuff, it turns out Microsoft had been warned about within the past year or more. Never fixed it. And there's a calculus, it's like we always compare it to insurance companies and cars, and it's expensive to roll out safety features in vehicles. We know there are going to be accidents and people are going to get hurt, and how much will those insurance claims cost us? And if it's less, we're just not going to roll out the security features. And that's gross to even think like that, but that's that's what companies do. And Microsoft's not hurting people. I don't, but that's the cold math of the corporation. That's what we're seeing.
I will just point out one thing, that they did not raise the price on E5, which effectively means for people who are paying for E3, the gap between E3 and E5 gets just a little bit closer, and that's where Microsoft wants everybody to jump to. So,
yeah, look, I mean, for some big chunk of that audience, on the basic plan, like the business basic, I think it's called, or whatever the entry level plan is, going up from $5 to $6 per month, which is probably on an annual basis, right? I'm sure it's more if you actually pay monthly, if you even can. I don't remember. Okay. I mean, I think a lot of companies or people would look at that and say, okay, it's reasonable. And Microsoft, it's fair to say, technically on the SKUs that are getting the price increases, they haven't ever increased the price of those things. Fair, but doesn't this stuff get less expensive over time? I mean, isn't that the kind of the point? I mean,
Yeah.
I guess we're paying for their infrastructure build out. I suppose that's what this really is. But like you said, the most profitable year, the most revenues ever, by far. It's not like they went up 11%, 5% or whatever. I mean, it was a big year.
It was a big year.
Yeah.
And so if you want to take a big jump in your deployment to Windows 10 or potentially even Windows 11 when it arrives, this is a message from our friends over at, I almost did it again, pointed to Smart Deploy, which is coming up on the screen. Smart Deploy makes it easy to manage hundreds or thousands of endpoints on any version of Windows anywhere. It's faster and more reliable than Symantec Ghost, MDT, or Acronis Snap Deploy. Head on over to smartdeploy.com/FRD to get started with your free exclusive software worth over $570. Couldn't hold that coffin.
Well, so this just in, you'll be fascinated by this. I just got a notification on my phone, and it's from Brad Sampson. He's asking me if I'm ready to record the podcast. So it's what time is it? 9. So it's 13 minutes later. Everything's working great. It's so good to be home.
So right back.
So good to be home.
I mean, as you learn, Paul, in Mexico, if you plug the Ethernet cable in, you do get better performance. So maybe you could burden yourself with that.
I am actually on this computer plugged into an Ethernet cable, but the phone, of course, is not. So, did you pay attention to the video game stuff we talked about yesterday? Yesterday.
A little bit, yeah. So there was actually a bunch of news. First, kicking it off.
Yeah.
First off, Microsoft announced a new Xbox headset, which
good. We've got 2 of them sitting there for some future promotion.
Well, it's like the wireless headset, Paul, but get this. They added a wire, and
how much is that going to cost extra? $15, $20?
Now, unlike Microsoft 365, this actually costs less. It's only going to be $60, but there's no Bluetooth, there's no wireless connectivity. It's I got you. Take the headset, wired. But put up.
I got to say, one of the biggest you've had various influences me over the years, but one of the biggest ones was switching to headphones for video gaming, and I resisted this for years. I really don't like headphones on my head, and I use these kind of things at home for the podcast and stuff, but I bought another one and I plugged it into my controller, and as you know, I don't have to explain this to people, but people are like, idiot, I mean, it makes a big difference.
Yeah. But so we now they launched a new game called 12 Minutes, but also for the older.
Which, by the way, that looks really interesting. That's the top-down thing where you go through
I'm
it's like a home invasion.
Halfway through it. I will tell you.
Really?
Yeah, it is. It's interesting. I will tell you that it can get a little frustrating because it's not like you gotta. Like, it's a puzzle at the end of the day. It's a puzzle. So you've got to really listen to like what's going on, and there's a lot of like repetition of things, but they put some mechanics in to make that repetition not so bad. Okay. And it's an interesting title, but more interesting, I think, to a lot of people listening to this is Quake is back.
So Quake wasn't quite what I wasn't sure what I was expecting. I think I would have said something yesterday to the tune of, what I don't want them to do is do what they did with Doom and reimagine Quake and then ruin it, make it a different game. Right. Yeah. And they didn't. But on the other hand, so I sat down this morning, booted up the computer. This thing is running Windows 11, so I had the new. Actually, we're probably 2 builds beyond where I was when I left. So I had to get that going, and I haven't rebooted it yet. I'll do that after the show. And then I said, I'll install Quake. And Quake, the original Quake, Quake 2, and Quake 3. These are all fantastic games. Quake 3 is what? Quake 3 Tournament, I think it's called, a Quake 3
Arena,
like that. Arena, there you go. Yeah. That's purely multiplayer, but Quake 1 and 2 have single and multi, and then they did a Quake 4 that was on Xbox 360. It was a great game too, and it was a sequel to Quake 2. If you try to keep this in your head, but also a great game. But Quake, the original Quake, I talked about this. It was I played this game so many times, and it does have that 4th episode, which is awesome, with several new levels, but it's it's just you have, if you're going to play this game, and I recommend it, it's a fantastic game, but you have to go into the settings and turn everything on. Like a lot of when it first comes up on the screen, it looks like it did in 1996. It's blocky, software-based graphics. It's the same exact. It's just the same. It's not. I don't know what. I guess it's 4K. I can't even tell, but it's you turn everything on, like smooth everything out, turn make sure everything's on or high or whatever, and but it's the same game. So the nice part about this is it's all those 3 games are free with, or come with Game Pass. If you want to buy Quake, it's $10, perfect. It's multiplayer with crossplay, fantastic. That's all awesome. The best thing about this game, dude, it's like 1.6 gigabytes. It downloads.
Oh wow!
Like zick, the line goes across and it's done. You ever install like Flight Simulator on a console and you come back like 2 days later and it's still struggling, and then you actually start it and you want to see something in high res and you have to install that, and no, this is like, this was made for DOS. The first version was DOS, and yeah, that's how old it is, and it's a cool game though. It's and then there's Call of Duty. I will say, whenever Call of Duty WW2 came out, so that would have been 3, 4, 5 years ago, whatever it was, I wrote an editorial about how they had run out of ideas. Whew, I was ahead of the game on that one.
Like, you've never heard
history a little bit.
You know that they're in the background. They're like, we need another world war.
Could you? Yeah, right. They do. Right. They're doing a wag the tail thing where they're trying to start wars so they can have the games around.
So in 10 years they have a roadmap.
Look, I love the World War II stuff, and the presentation's beautiful. There's the World War II has become a lot more diverse, Brad. I'm not sure how else to say it. I mean, it's like someone has to call this out. It's like look, it's 2021. Fine, okay. So the sniper main character is going to be a woman, of course, because we're plenty of women in World War II fighting, in the front lines. I mean, it is a percentage, right? Like, okay, fine. I don't mind that. I actually but it's so obviously like of today, It's not the Call of Duty they would have made 10, 20 years ago, whatever. Except that it is, because it's World War II. It's the same.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like that's where they got their start.
There's nothing more boring than the North Africa campaigns of the World War II games. There's nothing more boring than driving a tank in an empty desert. But the presentation looks good. It looks like it hits on everything: Eastern Front, Pacific, obviously Western Europe, Northern Africa. I mean, they're kind of hitting all the high points, I guess, low points, or whatever you want to say. But I welcome the change in a way. A year off, and then next year I'm sure we're going to go back to another Modern Warfare type game. I'm sure. I mean, how could they not? But man,
we'll know they've hit rock bottom when the defining battle is the Battle of Cyprus. Like, what? What?
What was the game you said you were playing? 12? Is it called 12 Minutes?
Yeah.
12 minutes. So 12 minutes is a take on the Groundhog thing. It's where we're just doing the same thing over and over again.
Yep.
Well, that's Call of Duty too, isn't it? I mean, aren't we just doing the same thing? I mean, and look, presentation matters, high res, take advantage of the new consoles, all that stuff. Yeah, great. I mean, am I complaining? I don't know but whew, how many times can we fight this war? We won. Jeez.
The only thing
like a million years ago now.
I care about is what they're supposedly bringing a new map to Warzone. So first new map in 2 years, I think.
Okay.
Or a year and a half. So that'll be a big deal.
All right. So I haven't seen that part of it. So
they haven't unveiled it yet.
Oh, they haven't talked about it. Okay.
They just said it's coming. There's a new anti-cheat system for PC players. That doesn't really impact me, but yeah.
So if you pre-order now, you're gonna get it. You can get in on the beta early, which I mean, look, I'm gonna buy this thing. I might as well just do it now.
Yeah. When's the beta?
I don't know. I've been awake for like 17 minutes, dude. It's funny to me that I've been awake long enough to install Quake. That's amazing. I was reading.
That doesn't tell us much.
Yeah. I was going through Google News this morning and I saw the trailer for Call of Duty. So I did watch that, and I saw that you can pre-order, and if you do that, you get in early. That I've literally said everything I know about it so far. So between my cat naps today, I'll try to figure out what's going on there. But interesting.
If you need to figure out what's going on in your workplace, make sure to check out our friends over at smartdeploy.com/FRD, where they have a flexible IT solution for the modern workplace. You can check out smartdeploy.com/FRD for a free offer worth $570 because we're all back stateside.
For now.